But today we're going to do some speaker replacement. I just want to keep the stock factory grills. So I did a little research on the mud forum, of course, and found that these speakers will work for the front, the TSG1620F, and these ones for the rear, TSF1034R. So I'm going to show you how I put these in. So we're going to start on the rear speakers. And the first thing you're going to do is pry off this factory grill. You can use a screwdriver if you're careful. I'm using this little pry tool. So that comes right off. And there's 3 screws that hold this plastic housing around the speaker. You take those out. And then there's some adhesive on the back of this, so it's going to stick pretty good. You're going to have to work at it to get it off of there. There we go. You can see they actually have adhesive, like a foam, right on the back of there. So it's just stuck on there good after 30 years. Okay, so now you're going to remove the speaker from this housing on the back. There's just a single screw on the back. That comes out. Then you can pull that out, access the wires. They're soldered on here. So I'm going to solder my new wires together, so I just wiggled these off. All right, so here's our two, the new speaker on the right and the old speaker on the left. And as you can tell, there's maybe a ½ inch difference in the depth of the new speaker. So we're gonna have to do a little modification on this plastic housing that speaker sits into. Because if you try and put this in there, it won't recess like it's supposed to. So what you'll do is we're going to take this and cut right along there all the way around. And once we cut that out, then that speaker will fit right in there. So I'm using this multi-purpose tool. I'm just going to cut that real quick off camera because it's noisy. And I'll show you how that fits. All right, so now we've got that cut out. And you see now that fits in there easily. And it's nice and flush on the front. One issue you have with these new speakers is there's 4 little mounting points. But because of the location of these little brackets for the grill to sit onto, and these 3 that mount it to the door, there's not really a configuration that you can use all 4 of these mounting points. So I'll go ahead and show you how I trimmed that. I'm just going to cut one of those off with some tin snips. And these have been used very well throughout the construction of my house and many other projects around the property since, so they're pretty dull. And then on this one, I'm going to just trim that corner off, and I'll show you why. I learned this installing the other side. If you trim that off, then that can be folded right there. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one and this one. All right, so I got those trimmed. Now, one thing I did, which is not necessary, but I have a little OCD, so the mounting holes on the door, these 2 are at the top. So the speaker's going to sit like that on the door. So I wanted this rectangular shape to be kind of even with the top of that, so that when the door's open, I'm looking at it. It's not sitting there cockeyed, because little things like that annoy me. So anyway, when I mount it, I'm going to do that. Line those up. Before I put that on, you don't have to do this, but I had this 3M tape laying around. It's kind of a foam adhesive tape. And so I thought, why not put it right around the perimeter of the speaker, so that when I put it in that plastic housing, it's held in there by that as well as the screws. So I'll go ahead and finish that, and then show you how I finish mounting this up. All right, so now I've got that adhesive tape on there. Again, that's probably optional. I just didn't want any rattling or moving. And then you're going to want to mount these wires that come with the speakers before you put this bracket on there. I went ahead and soldered them on there, and you'll have to carefully bend them down a little bit so that they don't get in the way of this bracket as it goes over the top. Oops. And that is a nice snug fit. And that foam kind of seals it up and will help hold it on there. All right, now that we got that on there, I've bent over those little tabs that I cut. And then I just used some little screws that I had sitting around. And you have to be careful as you put those in. You need pretty short ones. And you want to make sure on the back that it's not interfering with anything when you screw that in. So just make sure you do it, screw it in a direction that's not interfering with the wiring or the back of the speaker. And then you probably really only need a couple of those, especially if you use this adhesive stuff that I did. It holds it on there. That adhesive actually holds it pretty well. All right, so now I'm back over at the car, and I'm going to solder these wires. I've already stripped and prepped them and put some heat shrink on the wires beforehand so that I can cover those up when I'm done. And you'll need to get I got a little box here so that I can not have tension on that speaker while I'm doing this. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder these up. There we go. Looks stock, brand new speaker. All right, so to get to the front speakers, we're gonna have to take this door panel off. So I'll try and do this without getting in the way so you can see what I'm doing. But the first thing you wanna do is remove this little plastic trim piece up here. And it's got one little plug up here and then two little prongs that attach at the bottom. So you just wanna use a panel removal tool or something and just kind of take it slow. And that comes off. All right, the next thing you want to do is remove this little piece here where the door locks and window controls are. So you can use the same panel removal tool. And just gently pry that up. And that'll come out. There's a little tab on the back, so you have to slide it forward. And there's some plugs on the back that we need to undo. There's that one. That one. And the next thing is this armrest. You just want to take it slow when you're doing these so you don't break any clips underneath there. And so you don't scratch up the plastic. There we go. See those 3 little clips on the back, and then these 2 little guides that pop into these. So when you do it, it'll be easier because you'll be able to see, you'll know what you're doing. Then there's a couple of screws here that we need to take out, and one under here. All right, and then I think the last screw is right here, just like your FJ40 or FJ60, 62, 55. There's one screw that holds that little bezel around the handle, and it's got a tab on the front, so you want to pry from this side. That comes right out. And then I think that's all the screws, so we're going to start prying the panel. And you probably can't see what I'm doing, but I'm just going to start at the bottom. You want to try and get your pry tool right by the plastic clips. Because you don't want to break that masonite or whatever they use on the back. And you don't want to break the clip, so just take it real slow. Around both sides, if you slide your pry tool back there, you can kind of feel where the clips are. It's kind of tough on these old cars because they get a little brittle. All right, I got them all unclipped. I stopped the video for a minute because I just had to take it really slow. This 80 is it's a pretty clean one. I doubt this door panel's ever been off of here. And it looks like I was able to not damage any clips, so that's great. So now I can set this aside and replace that speaker. All right, now that I've got the door panel off, I can take this speaker grill protector deal off of here. Go. Looks like just like the back speakers, they've used some foam adhesive to keep that on there nice and solid. So that's why it was hard to get off there. So might be good to have some of that foam like I showed you I used on the rear speakers. Might be handy to have some of that around so that you can redo it. That speaker just unplugs like so, which you're probably going to want to reuse that plug on the new speaker. All right, so here's the new speaker, and it may be hard to see in the video, but the door metal in the door has a recess where the speaker goes. The speaker has these little tabs on the side that it looks like I'm gonna have to snip those off to be able to get this, because this outer rim fits perfectly in that recess. So those are getting in the way. So I'm gonna have to trim those off. Looks like the top mounting hole will line up, the bottom mounting hole will line up, but I may have to drill some holes through the outer housing of this speaker. Hopefully it sounds a lot better. My other speakers were completely gone. The paper backing on it was gone out of the cone, so this should be a good improvement. All right, so I got those trimmed off just using some tin snips. Now the issue is similar to what we were having in the back. These back speakers, these front speakers are a little bit deeper, and the window track is right there. So when I put that in, it fits better now that those tabs are gone, but then it hits that track. So I'm gonna have to put some spacers behind just to pull that out just a smidge so it clears that track. All right, so I got the speaker mounted. I just had to use some screws that I had around, as the thickness of the speaker is thicker than the stock one. So if you use the stock bolts, it's gonna be too thick for the door panel to go over top. So I didn't video most of the reassembly because it's pretty much a reverse of what you do to take it apart. But just wanted to note on this grill that I put back on, I showed you before that little clip that I broke when I tried to pry that off. So I went ahead and just did a little plastic welding on the back to hold that on, so it's nice and tight, and getting her back together now. All right, guys, installation is complete. Everything's put back together. I'm not going to play it loud on the video because it won't convey well, but I can tell you that my old speakers probably were spent, but they were also 30 years old. So these new speakers are a great improvement to me. Before I could turn it up maybe a third of the way before it started sounding terrible. And now I can turn it way up. So that's been great. Well worth it for 120 bucks to me. If you're really into audio, there's a lot of aftermarket options, but I wanted to keep the stock head unit. And the reason why is because my family's kind of always been into cruisers. In fact, my first car was an FJ80. And I remember back in '93, my dad brought home an 80 series that he bought. And I loved that thing. It seemed like it was so deluxe back then. And so it's nostalgia for me. I just love driving this thing with this old stereo. And so for now, I'm keeping it. So if you're thinking of doing this mod, you just want to upgrade your speakers but keep things stock, or you just want to keep the stock speaker grills in the doors, this is a great mod. Well worth the time. So I say do it. Thanks for watching.